my colleague and friend, Defense Secretary Girdhar Armane, Ambassador Sandhu, again good friend and our ambassador in Washington DC, Additional Secretary Vani Rao, friends from the media. As Arindam just said, we have just now concluded a very rewarding and a substantive 2+2 dialogue, the 5th edition of this dialogue between India and the United States. The meetings today and the atmospherics surrounding the meeting were all indicative of the enduring commitment of the bilateral partnership, but equally importantly, our desire to work together to expand this partnership further and to deepen it more. You are all aware of the intensity of the diplomatic engagement between India and the United States in recent years, including this year in particular. We have had two very highly successful heads of the state, heads of the government visit. Honorable Prime Minister had a historical visit to the U.S. in June this year, and most recently we had the honor of welcoming President Biden on a successful visit to India on the occasion of the G20 summit. The collective outcomes of Honorable Prime Minister's visit to the U.S. and President Biden's visit to India have really given us a strong leadership-driven momentum to bolster, to strengthen, to expand this relationship much further. In today's 2+2 discussions, the principals on both sides, Honorable Raksha Mantri Ji, External Affairs Minister on the Indian side, Secretary of State and Secretary of Defense on the US side, undertook a comprehensive review of our bilateral relations. We discussed of multiple partnerships. After I finish, my colleague, Defense Secretary, will speak to the defense partnership part, defense and security cooperation part of this relationship. But besides that, the trade and investment partnership, the technology partnership, partnerships relating to the emerging area of critical and emerging technologies, value chain and supply chain securitization of different products and services, partnership in the field of space, our continuing engagement in the field of mineral securities through the Mineral Security Partnership Framework, our common efforts in combating terrorism. These all and much more formed part of the overview of bilateral relationship that was undertaken by the principals earlier in the 2+2 dialogue. In addition, the principals also focused on and deliberated on the ongoing regional developments. They, of course, discussed the common challenges, the shared challenges that both India and the US face, but also how to work more strongly to harness the opportunities that exist in many of the regions of the world. If I was to highlight few of 4 or 5 specific themes under the regional discussion, one was our growing cooperation on the connectivity side, particularly including through the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor. As you are all aware, that was launched on the sidelines of the G20 summit in September this year. Continuing and growing cooperation under the Quad framework, our partnership, of course, in the Indo-Pacific, how a perspective on India's leadership of the global South and what value proposition that brings to the India-U.S. Relationship, etc. These were some of the areas which we focused on in the principles focused on in the discussions in the 2+2 Hill today. Sure, I thought I was loud enough and didn't want somebody to say lower down the volume. Today's dialogue has actually helped both India and the US to energize the multifaceted India-US cooperation and reaffirmed our partnership, the objectives and the goals inherent in it. We are grateful to the principals for guiding our efforts to elevate the India-US relations. Later in the evening, there would be call on the Honorable Prime Minister by the four principals on both sides. With these words, I would stop and would request my colleague, Defence Secretary, to speak on important segments of 2+2 earlier today. Okay.
Thank you. Vinay, Terry, Vani and Arindam and friends from media. The visit to India of Secretary of State and the Secretary of Defence from US is when the defence ties between the two countries are the strongest. We had a very successful visit of our Honorable Prime Minister in June this year, in which many new initiatives were struck. These initiatives have to be taken to their logical conclusion. This 2+2 is in a way continuation of the important steps taken during that visit. We in the 2+2 meeting shared our common and convergent interests and shared our mutual goals. Especially in the regional and global scenario, when the situation is very volatile, the visit of the dignitaries from US is of great significance. It affords an opportunity to review the security and see how the upholding of international law and humanitarian assistance can be looked at very closely and in a mutually comfortable fashion. We have seen a convergence of strategy and economic interests over a period of time. In fact, many times our strategic interests are subserved by our economic cooperation and codependence. Especially in the field of technology, our cooperation has gone to a new level. Yesterday there was a investor meet, both from US and India. The innovative ecosystem had a very deep dialogue. The investors and the innovators had a heart-to-heart talk under the direction of the DIU from US and the DIO of Ministry of Defence India. This partnership will give the necessary dynamism for Indian industry, enabling them to become parts of the global supply chain. Today, the two principals, in fact four of them, had a very frank and in-depth discussion covering the bilateral relationship in a comprehensive fashion, as Vinay has explained. In essence, the defence cooperation has become a rock-solid support to the bilateral relations between the two countries. The potential collaboration in emerging domains for the civilian commercial use as well as for the strategic use